Okay, we are live. Okay, guys, welcome back to Let's Get Freaky podcast. Very excited to welcome our next guest tonight. We are joined by Justin Brown. How are you, sir? Welcome.
I'm doing good, brother. How are you?
I'm excited to have you on, man. Thank you very much for being here. You're based in Tennessee,
Yeah.
cool part of the US, man. I want to get
Oh,
over
yeah.
there.
Appalachia.
Yeah,
Hillbillies is what they call it in the
yeah.
States. I'm a hillbilly.
I feel like I must have hillbilly in my blood, man, because I feel like it's calling me. I feel like I need to get over there, man.
Well, if
I
you
love
do,
it.
come over. We'll go Bigfoot hunting.
Oh man, that is the dream. That is the absolute dream. I've had paranormal experiences. I've seen weird stuff, experienced a lot of strangeness, but my one thing is I would love to see a Sasquatch. That's the goal.
Well, I just interviewed a guy, spoiler alert. So your people will know probably a month or two in advance, but
Oh
I just
wow.
interviewed a guy and he's from my area. And just like, I think it was last summer in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, a guy captured a portal opening up on a trail down there in Gatlinburg. And you see the portal and the wavy lines come out, and you see this shadowy figure of like this Bigfoot. And he'd been looking for it forever. And he said that he always heard stuff from behind. So he actually attached his GoPro on the back of his backpack just to see if he'd catch anything. And all this happened unbeknownst to him. He didn't know till he got home and uploaded everything up on his computer and then put it on
Wow.
the internet, and it just kind of went wild. But this is not that guy. But I was just saying, all the Bigfoot stuff in the area.
Yeah.
But this guy that I interviewed, a listener of mine, reached out and was like, I got a buddy that's had a crazy Bigfoot experience. And I asked him if he'd be willing to talk to you. Here's his telephone number. So I talked to him and stuff. And this guy was basically haunted by Bigfoot the entire summer of 2014. He has a lake house. He said, and I love to go night fishing. He said, I'd go out. He said, and I would just hear stuff in the woods and rocks being thrown off the cliffs. He said, into the lake. And he said, I thought it was kids throwing rocks at my boat. He said, and I'm screaming, cussing at them. He said, and then next thing you know, he said, just badoosh. He said, this big boulder get through in. He said, about the size of a car. He
Wow,
said, and
man.
I ended up getting the hell out of there. And he said, uh, like the next day, he said there was 5 trees. He said looked like somebody just pulled them up and stacked them on top of and around his boat where he couldn't even get it out no more. And then
Wow.
he said, then I come outside and he said later that summer, he said, and seen orbs and flashing lights. He said, UFO ships. He said, just all this stuff throughout the entire summer. And he said, it was just a lot of crazy experiences. And then one night he said that the thing howled at him 3 times. And he said that he went to a car dealership and said that he was looking at Jeeps and they had like those little Sasquatch stickers on the back. And he just made a comment. He's like, that guy lives up on Douglas Lake, don't you? He said, and the guy was like, "Oh my God, you gotta talk to my manager. Just wait right here." And he runs and gets the manager, and the manager's like, "So you seen the Bigfoot on Douglas Lake, huh?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, and he named, this certain day in the area and all this stuff, and he was like, "Yeah, yeah, that's it." And he was like, "I heard him howl 3 times one night." He said about 3 a.m. He's like, "I was on the lake, I heard it too." So it was crazy. He's like, how
Wow.
all that stuff lined up.
Yeah. That's cool, but when you get that confirmation as well, someone else on the same night has seen and heard the same thing. That's so cool, man.
Yeah.
Wow. I guess it's got to be like it's sort of like a careful what you wish for thing with Bigfoot
Yeah.
because as much as I say I'd love to see one and it fascinates me so much, I can imagine it is terrifying to
Oh, I can only imagine.
experience that and yeah, especially if it's outside your house and you're getting all this strange activity along with it, man. But
Mhm.
so cool. Have you had any Bigfoot experiences possibly?
No,
Not
not
yet.
that I'm aware of.
Not
Not
yet.
yet. Which I ain't been out looking for him neither. I got a lot of crazy friends that go out and look for this thing,
Yeah,
set out
yeah.
bait and traps and cameras and camp out and holler for it and everything else. I'm like, man, y'all are crazy.
Man, that's what I want to do, man. I want to get. I've got my Bigfoot
You
top on tonight.
crazy.
Actually, I am crazy. I mean, we there are reports. I've spoken to people here in the UK that claim to have seen them here in the UK, which is a lot of people claim it, so it's possible. I think if they're here in the UK, it's more of a supernatural being, in my opinion,
Mm.
because there's we have got a lot of land here and a lot of forests, but not as much that you think something like that could remain elusive if it was flesh and blood.
And over there,
But
you call it
again,
the wild man, don't you?
yeah, the wild man. Yeah,
I read a really
yeah.
good book by Nick Redfern, and
Oh,
he's from the
okay.
UK, and he wrote a really good book talking about all the wild man traditions and stuff over in the
Yeah,
UK.
yeah. And it goes way back, like, and it's in every culture around the world, which is what I find so interesting. So
Hmm.
there's something to it, man.
Oh, definitely.
So you mentioned your podcast, and I can't wait for that episode to come out.
Mm.
Prometheus Lens, which is
Yeah.
absolutely awesome. Can you tell us about your show, what got it started, and what your show's about?
Well, I'm like you. I've only been podcasting for about 2 years now, but I was, raised in the South, grew up a Christian, and grew up in the church and stuff, and uh, it wasn't until like my mid 20s, it was around 2012, I discovered Mike Heiser's book, The Unseen Realm. And it was talking about, all this, the supernatural things of the Bible that's right there in the Bible. It's just pastors and preachers don't talk about it. And for me, growing up reading this stuff and knowing this stuff my whole life, to have all this stuff there in front of my face, like giants, gods, and dragons, and fallen angels, and Nephilim. And I'm like, man, how did I miss this? Why wasn't I taught this stuff? And so I just kind of like took a deep dive looking into all the weird and supernatural things of the Bible. And so after a few years, I decided to invite a few of my buddies over, for, just buddies that I had in life, and then also friends from church, to just have like a guys' night, hang out, Bible study, and just talk about all this stuff. And I invited probably 15, 20 guys, but only had three guys show up. And we covered the three rebellions that's in Michael Heiser's book. So we had three meetings and covered those three things. And then after it was over with, my buddy Steve was like, man, this is pretty profound stuff. I've never heard of this stuff. And you lay it out well, and this guy, Mike Heiser, he knows what he's talking about. And we should be recording this. And I'd never even heard, I mean, I'd heard of a podcast, but I wasn't listening to them. I mean, I was that big dumb guy. I was like, okay, that's internet radio, right? And he, stayed on me for several weeks until finally I agreed. He had a brother that did podcasting and showed us the ropes and stuff. And we done that for like a year. And then I just fell in love with it. So I was on YouTube teaching myself how to compress the audio. And then I got into video and just, I mean, I loved it. And I've always been a big history nerd and a conspiracy theorist kind of guy. So I was like, man, I want to do this, but I want to go a step further. I want to look at conspiracy theory. I want to look at supernatural experiences, ancient history, lost civilizations, just all these, cool, fascinating subjects, and just talk to the authors, talk to the researchers, and just basically just hit the reset button on my brain, because it seems like the more I look into things myself, the more I found out that I've either been lied to or unintentionally misled, because people just tend to repeat what they hear and don't look into it for themselves. So I just embarked on what I coined it, the hero's journey. Going into the unknown, slaying the dragon, rescuing the damsel, and coming out on the other end as a hero and with a whole new perspective on life. So that's what the Prometheus lens is all about.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. It's everything we love here at Let's Get Freaky as well, man. Everything you touched on there is all I love and all we talk about on this show is the conspiracies, the supernatural. I love it all, man. So very excited to listen to your show more. I've recently found it and I'm loving it. So I recommend everyone go over and check it out. The links will be in the show description. Yeah, man.
And I'm gonna have
I'm,
you over too, man, because I
I'd
want to hear
love
some of
to.
your experiences.
Yeah, I would be honored to come on, man. Yeah, I've had some weird stuff starting from a young age as a kid. I won't go into it now. I'll save it for your show. So I've said it millions of times, so let's get freaky. But yeah, man, once you have an experience that's paranormal, supernatural, it opens you up to everything. Yeah, anything's now possible. Once you've seen something that people will tell you doesn't exist, but you've seen it and you know it does, that changes the game.
Mm-hmm. You can't unsee it.
You can't unsee it, man. And even you talk to people that have not experienced anything, and I get it. You know, people give you that look, like, really? Did you see it? Yes. I've got to the point now where it's become so normal for me to talk about this sort of stuff that just the normal nothing's real life is weird. You know, if that
And
makes
and it's
sense.
hard to talk politics and sports and all the things that you thought was
Yeah,
so important and
yeah,
fascinating before. It's hard to go
100%.
back to that.
100%, man. And I love my sports. I really do. And I still watch my sports and I still get into it, but not like I used to, which is, it used to ruin my week. If one of my teams lost, that was my week gone. I was like, yeah, nothing else matters, man, apart from the family, you know. But now it's like, once you see the bigger picture of the world and the things that we're lied to, like you were saying, that we're lied to about, and, you know, it's the little things don't matter anymore. Sports doesn't really matter, really. So it sort of ruins that when you go down these rabbit holes.
Yeah.
But so I'd like to get into some of your experiences that you've I know you've had uh, a Lilith encounter, which I'm very
Yeah.
interested in hearing about, man. Can we get into that?
Yeah, definitely. Uh, like I said, I give a little background. I grew up in the South, and that's what they call the Bible Belt. Either the only kind of stools in the South is either a church stool or pew or a bar stool. That's kind of the two paths you got.
Yeah,
And so I grew up going to church every Sunday and had a good foundation, in Christ. And of course, there's usually like church fallout and arguments and things like that. And my family was no exception. There was a fallout, and several of the family members just quit going to this church, and it was preteen years. So then I started getting a little rebellious, and especially once I turned 16, I got the keys to the car and I just went wild. And it sounds cliche, but it was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And when people think of Tennessee, they think of, farms. They think of the Appalachian Mountains and just, beautiful, scenery, nature, and things like that. And then that is true. But at the same time, where it's rural, small farm towns for the most part, uh, mischief and drugs are really predominant because when you're a teenager and you don't have a city that's close by that you can go to the skating ring or bowling alley or the movies or hell even a mall just to walk around, hang out with your friends and stuff, you get bored pretty fast. And when you get bored, you find things to get into, and it's usually trouble. And it's usually, vandalism and uh, stealing, drinking, drugs, just things of that nature. You find ways to entertain yourself in a small town. And that's what happened with me. And started experimenting, with pot, and that went to pills. And this was in the early 2000s. Methamphetamine became really, really predominant in my area. And during this time, there was no regulations or anything like that on it. It was kind of a new thing. Uh, and you could go to Walmart, or a convenience store or whatever, one stop shop, and buy all the ingredients you needed to make this stuff. And then where we lived in the mountains, you had all this cover. You could just go in, buy all this stuff, load your backpack up, and just take a little hike up into the mountains and cook your stuff and come out and have you a big grocery bag full of amphetamines. And it was everywhere. And so I went down that path for quite a few years. And honestly, when you're dealing with that, and especially when you're running with the people that's making the stuff, it's readily available. And then you get with other raging hormone teenagers, and girls, and they get hooked on this stuff. And then you're the guy that's always got it. Then, I mean, you become a lot more handsome. You know what I mean? And I did. I took advantage of that situation. And so it was just sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And went on for many years. But honestly, I've always had a strong mind and a will. And I just started seeing everybody around me, man, just spiraling out of control. And I mean, that's easy for me to say while I'm sitting there doing all this stuff too. But I mean, I I I had a good handle on it. You know what I mean? And I know everybody says that, but I wasn't out here stealing from my parents or my grandparents to pay for my addiction. Wasn't robbing convenience stores and stealing cars and just all this other stuff. But I had friends that were. One of my best friends went to prison during this time as soon as he turned 18 for aggravated armed robbery. He needed some money and he wanted a fix. So he grabbed his gun and just went to a store and held it to people's head and got the money. And he was so twisted on that stuff that what got him caught was uh, he took the extra time just to torment the people, sitting there making them get on their knees and cry and beg for mercy and just toying with them. And like I said, many friends stealing off their parents and everything else. Uh, and when you do that stuff for the people that's not familiar, I talk about like this, like everybody should know what I'm talking about. And I know there's some people out there that don't. Uh, Amphetamines is a stimulant, kind of like cocaine, but it's a lot stronger. You know, like when you do cocaine, you got to do mass amounts of it. Where this amphetamine, just a little bit goes a long way. You can do just a little bitty line of this stuff, and you'll be up for 2 or 3 days, just wired as can be, running 100 miles an hour, and it curbs your appetite. You don't want to eat, and as tired as you may be, you can't sleep. You'll lay down and close your eyes and try to go to sleep. You can't. And so when you done that stuff and you stayed up for several days and didn't eat, didn't sleep. Uh, and there was people even just, shooting this stuff up. And long story short is people would stay up for so long that they would fall asleep driving, wreck their cars and just total it. And I had several friends die.
Oh man.
And been in the same wrecks, actually, they, I was in worse wrecks than they were. Walked away without a scratch, and they died. I had several friends overdose and die. Now, me, I never got into the needles and stuff, but I had several friends that did, and sit there and overdose and die, mixing all these different drugs and stuff. And I always just looked at it as, oh, I'm just, I'm lucky, or I'm smart. And me looking back now, I was like, no, that's God's what that was. That was a foundation in Christ and praying parents and praying grandparents. I had a covering over me. But when you do this stuff, you would sometimes, get hallucinations, and you would see what they call the shadow people and the hat people. And you hear a lot about this with the sleep paralysis and things like that. And everybody reported seeing the same figures. And but the excuse was, or explanation was, is, oh, you're tweaking. Your mind's playing tricks on you. You've not slept in days. You've not had anything to eat. Your mind's playing tricks on you. And then as I got older, I heard stories about the World War II vets in America that came back and got exposed to amphetamines through the Germans and Hitler, because that's where that stuff, either originated with him or it got really big with him. And that's why when you read your history books about these German armies covering so much ground in such a short time and just being like super soldiers, is
Yeah.
because they were all on this amphetamine. They didn't have to stop to sleep or rest or eat. They were on this amphetamine, and the American soldiers got exposed to that while they were over there. And when they came back, they started getting into Harley Davidsons and uh, forming biker clubs and things like that. And which I don't know if it's like that in UK, but like in America, the Guardian bells are a big thing. Do they have those over there?
So is that like the biker gang?
Like the little bells that they put on the forks of the motorcycles?
Uh, I'm not too sure to be honest. I know we've got like the Hells Angels
Mm-hmm.
gangs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What is it?
Well, this is like they call it the Guardian bell, and it's just
Hmm.
looks like a keychain and a little bell. And the American bikers that came back would place these on their forks, and it's a big thing to this day. You know,
Okay.
everybody does it, and they call them the Guardian bells. They're kind of like good luck charms. But how that originated was those American soldiers came back and got strung out on these amphetamines and stayed up for days riding their bikes, and they started seeing these shadow figures and stuff while they were riding their bikes. And they had a saying like, watch out for the goblins. And these guys would report that they would see these goblins run out in front of their bikes or run across the road, and they would jerk to try to steer and miss them. And many of them would doze off and fall asleep. And if they hit a bump or swerved suddenly, this bell would sound and it would wake them
Ah,
up. And so that's what they were for.
interesting.
So, I mean, there's just a lot of things that you see with that's correlated to the spiritual and supernatural realm that a lot of people just overlook and just blame it. Oh, it's the drugs. Oh, they're hallucinating. Well, no,
Yeah.
these are the same entities. When people take DMT
Yeah.
and ayahuasca, they talk about going into the DMT realm and seeing these goblins and these elves. People in sleep paralysis see these shadow figures. They're seeing the same things. It's this drug is thinning or dropping a veil, and
Yes.
you're able to see into this spiritual realm. I firmly believe that,
Yeah, man. Yeah.
but I didn't know that at the time. I was just like, I just, I'm tweaking. My mind's playing tricks on me and things like that. So I told all that just to kind of give some context and experience and what I went through to lead up to this event here. And so, like I said, I seen all my friends just going down this dark path, and I'm like, dude, this is going to end up being me if I don't disassociate and just walk away from all this. So I did, and started getting my life back together, and started growing up, and uh, found me a church, started going back to church, and realigned myself and recommitted myself back to Christ, and started reading my Bible again, and things were good. Well, it was several years later after all that. It was maybe 5 or 6 years back into my walk with Christ that I had hurt my back at work. And I mean, everybody pulls their back or does something little thing, and you're stoved up walking around for a few days. But this lasted for like a month and a half, And it's like when I'd get out of bed, I'd just be so stiff I couldn't stand up straight. And I mean, it just finally got to the point where I was like, I'm going to go to the doctor. And I'm the kind of guy that never goes to the doctor. I'm dying if I go to the doctor because I see them all as crooks trying to take my money. And even if you're not sick, they're going to tell you you're sick just to give you some medicine.
That's how I am, man. I'm exactly the
Yeah.
same.
So so for me to go, man, I was hurting. And so they done some x-rays and stuff, and they were like, oh yeah, you've slipped a disc, and we see some arthritis in here. You must have fell or hurt it, playing sports when you're younger or something, and now it's just starting to flare up. And so the doctor's like, I'm gonna put you on some antidepressants. And I looked at him and I'm like, no, I'm not depressed, you know. And he was like, well, hear me out. He said, now, he said, they've done a bunch of studies and they've seen that certain types will bond to pain receptors and block pain signals. And many studies have shown that this helps people. And this way, you don't have to suffer in pain. And we also don't have to worry about putting you on a narcotic that runs all kinds of other risks and things like that. And I think it would give you some relief. So I was like, you know what? Well, I'll try it. So I took them, and it was like the first night I started having these just hellacious nightmares. And I'm the type of guy. I mean, I'm like anybody else. I mean, I've had nightmares before, but man, these were just straight up demonic. I'm talking like the gates of hell opening up at the foot of your bed, and arms grabbing you, trying to pull you in, and just entities sitting on your chest and covering your mouth where you can't talk, and just, I mean, just hellacious
Oh
nightmares.
man.
And I was the kind of guy, especially as a kid, I was a very lucid dreamer. And even to this day, if I realize I'm in a dream, I can totally just take the wheel and take control. I can do whatever I want. And if it's something scary and I realize, to myself that this is a dream, I can make myself wake up. I'm like, this is a dream, wake up. And as I gotten older, I don't know if it's just your imagination doesn't, you know, hold on as good, or you're tainted by the materialism of the world. But it's kind of like left me. And most of the time, if I dream at all, I don't remember it until a day or two later, and something happens that kind of just triggers the memory. So these dreams, or nightmares rather, were every night, frequently. So then I just called the doctor and I'm like, this ain't gonna work. I'm having some really bad nightmares. Uh and he's like, well, come back in and we'll adjust the dose, or we'll change to a different, prescription. There's three or four different ones. Sometimes we have to tinker with it. It's common. People report, having, nightmares and stuff. So he ended up changing my medicine at least two or three different times in the dosage, two or three different times. And they just kept getting worse. And it was like that last time I went, like I said, it was probably the third time I had, went to work, come home, took the medicine, went to go lay down and go to bed. Well, that night, when I went to sleep, I had a dream that I was driving down the road in my truck, had the wife in the passenger seat, and the two kids in the back. And we're riding down this little backcountry road, and there's this buzzard like in the middle of the road, and it was eating like on this dead carcass. I think it might have been like a deer or something, but it was just a dead carcass that this, vulture was tearing away at. And it was a small little road, so I couldn't get around it. So I stopped the truck and I honked the horn at it to try to scare the bird away. Well, when I honked the horn, this bird stands up from its crouched position, but this thing just keeps rising and rising, and it's every bit of 5.5, foot tall, 5'8". huge bird. And in the headlights of the truck, it was black, but it had like a purple shimmer on the tips of it. And like when you spill like gas on the road and in the sunlight, how it's kind of got that fluorescent kind of shimmer. This is what it kind of looked like in the headlights of the truck of the Dream. I mean, it was just so vivid. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, good Lord, this is a pterodactyl. This ain't no bird. Well, when it turns around, it's a naked woman in the front with bird feet, blonde hair, glowing red eyes, but with a beak for a mouth. I mean, it was just terrifying. And it just, stared right into the truck. And it was just like, don't move. You know what I mean? Just maybe won't see you. Just don't move. And the kids are screaming in the back seat of the car, and the wife screaming, trying to calm them down. And I'm just sitting there trying to, tell everybody to chill out, just lock the doors. Well, as I'm talking to everybody, this thing just, boom, just goes straight up into the air and it's gone. So then I'm turning around, I'm consoling everybody. I'm like, it's fine, it's gone. We're safe, everything's good. And as I'm saying this, it just boom, boom, just lands. I mean, right next to the driver's side door. And I go to move and I can't move. And I look with my eyes and it's like everybody was like frozen in time. They're just stuck. And
It's funny your screen's frozen for some reason. Sorry,
oh,
man. Sorry, man. I don't know what's happened.
uh-oh.
I can hear you perfect, but your screen's frozen.
Hang on a second.
Sorry, man. It's just weird how
Oh,
he's talking
you're
about
good.
frozen in time.
Yeah. Let's see. Let
I
me try
don't know.
turning the camera off and back on.
There's like a little thumb came up. I don't know what that was. Oh, he's back.
Oh, that's
There
them
we go.
emoji things. They're so annoying.
Sorry, man.
Oh yeah, you're good. Uh, but yeah, when she landed next to the driver's side door and opened it up, and like I said, I was just frozen in time, and the kids were too. And she rips open the car door and she leans in and she's like rubbing my chest, and running her fingers through my hair and just rubbing the inside of my thigh, just, molesting me pretty much, just rubbing me all over and I can't move. And at this point, I'm telling myself, I'm like, this is a dream. This is a dream. Wake up. And it's like I was trying to wake up and because I was like getting glimpses of the bedroom, but then it was just like it was kept pulling me back like I was just chained there. And like I said, I couldn't move, but then my fingers started tingling. Like, when your fingers go numb and you're starting to get feeling or blood flow back into them.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to gain mobility back. And as she's doing this, she's leaning in, she's smelling my neck and just, taking her nose and rubbing up my neck and taking her tongue and licking my neck and my ear, man. And it's just, you just feel helpless and just terrified. And like I said, though, I could start to move my hands and stuff. But as she's doing this, she gets up to my ear and then she just like whispers so seductively. And she says, I've missed you. And it was about this time I could move my hands. And the only thing that I could think to do, I just leaned over and I grabbed the truck door and I just slammed her upper body into the truck door. And when I did, she just let out this just gut wrenching just scream or screech. And she like flew up into the air again. And at this point, I was still telling myself, this is a dream, wake up. This is a dream, wake up. And I finally was able to wake up. And when I did, I just gasped for air and I sat up into the bed. And I was just pouring sweat, hyperventilating, and woke the wife up. And she sits up and she's, rubbing my back and she's like, What's the matter? You okay? You okay? And I'm like, yeah, God, I just had an awful nightmare. She's like, well, it's fine. Everything's fine. And I was like, I said, it's that damn medicine. I've known it for the past, several weeks, and I'm done with them. And I went straight to the toilet and I threw them things down the toilet and I flushed them. And, but then I started thinking, I'm like, what the hell was that? Because, I mean, like I said, I started getting back in church, and been back in church for several years. And I've been, reading Michael Heiser's work and studying some of this, supernatural stuff. But I'd never looked into, the different demons. What do they look like, and all this stuff. And so I remember I pulled out my phone and I just started typing in half bird, half woman, demon, and all these different things. And it was like immediately, it was like the first or maybe second image that popped up on my search. And it was her to the
Oh
T.
wow,
Naked woman in the front, bird in the back, and the wings and the bird feet. I mean, everything to the T. Oh, that thing froze again.
man, yeah, that thumb's come back.
Anytime my thumb goes up,
Yeah.
dang.
Wow, man,
Okay.
you're back,
But
man. That
so it was, yeah, like I said, and it was her beyond a shadow of a doubt. And it said, this was the demon Lilith. And so I got to researching. I'm like, well, what is Lilith? I mean, because I had no preconceived notions of what she was. So, I mean, I know a lot of times people will watch a scary movie, about Freddy Krueger, and they'll dream about Freddy Krueger that night. So this was no preconditioning or programming or idea or thought that I had in my head whatsoever. I mean, I had to Google search what she was when I woke up. But then when I got to reading, that she was a demon spirit and she was a siren, a succubus, and that she was basically like a demon god of mindless violence and sex and all this stuff. And I'm like, gosh, and then of course you asked the question. She said she missed me. Why did she miss me? And it's like it hit me like a ton of bricks. It was like, because unbeknownst to me, all those years that I was doing all these drugs, the sex, drugs, and rock and roll years, I was spiritually in a relationship and running with this spirit. And when I got back with the Lord and stopped doing all that stuff and walked away, it's like I shut that door and broke it off with her. And for the first time in years, those drugs, I don't know, it's like it cracked open a window to a past sin or a way that she had to commune with me, and she come running and kicked that door down.
wow. It just shows you how dangerous it is. These drugs that you're taking off your doctor that you've been prescribed, that he's recommended, and we're sort of taught to trust what our doctor says. And you know, I'm sure he didn't realize what he was doing to you, but he's opened up something there. Oh man, that's wild.
Yeah. And I'm not one of these anti-medicine guys. I mean,
Hmm.
I know there's plenty of people out there that actually suffer from depression, and drugs like these have saved their life.
Yeah,
But where I was not depressed, I didn't need it, and I was taking a medication that I didn't need. But also, too, I'm a firm believer that one man's sin is not everybody else's sin.
yeah,
And where I had a history of drugs and things like that, it had a really negative effect on me. So I'm in no way trying to say that, you know, people don't take drugs, don't go to your doctors. No, that's not what I'm saying at all.
Yeah,
Each person is different, and you got to figure out what's good for you and right for you.
yeah, for sure. Man, that is
But
wild.
definitely these drugs like the DMT and the ayahuasca and all these different things, while we're doing, I ain't hurting nobody but myself. Oh, I'm just experimenting, and oh, you think of the short term, but I'm a firm believer that, the Bible says it, the occultists say it. You know, it's a pretty common phrase. On earth as it is in heaven, as above, so below. The things that you do here have implications in another realm that is adjacent. And the Bible even says that you are seated in heavenly places. So it's like we have to be careful and more mindful, especially with things like pharmakia and drugs and things like that, because they have spiritual implications.
Yeah, yeah. I can't remember the name of this drug, but when I was a kid, my dad uh, was put on some medication, and it had a very negative effect on him. I know he was having, I don't know, he was definitely having hallucinations and things like that was happening. And he quickly got off them drugs. And I don't even know why he was taking them. I need to ask him really, but um, the drugs that whatever it was that he was taking, they were sort of still being trialed, and they actually took them off the market. I don't think you can get them anymore because it was having such a bad effect on so many people. My dad being one of them. So I'm always very wary when a doctor says about antidepressants or anything. I'm very wary. But man, that's wild what that's done to you there, man.
Yeah. And
Wow.
especially too, just looking back too with, my mindset and how it's changed and how I have this supernatural and biblical worldview
Mhm.
to even the days of doing the amphetamines. You know, I hindsight's always 2020, I guess, but it's like all those nights that I was peeking out the windows and seeing these shadow figures and these, you know, trolls and elves running across the road and things like that. It's like, no, that just wasn't my mind playing tricks on me.
Yeah,
I'm a firm believer that your body is a car and your soul is the driver that's inside the car turning the wheel.
yeah,
And your brain is the like a supercomputer and your eyes are a receiver. We are tuned to a certain channel, a certain frequency, and our eyes tell us, what we're to see. But, Paul says, we battle not against flesh and blood, against rulers, principalities, archons, spiritual wickedness in high places. And there is spirits, angels, demons, all this stuff we share dominion with. It's just they are tuned to a different frequency that our receivers are not tuned to and can't see. And messing with things like that, an ayahuasca, DMT, it's you're taking the knob of the radio and you're turning that dial and tuning to a different station.
yeah, yeah. And as you said, a lot of people see and experience and describe exactly the same thing. They're seeing the
Yeah,
same thing. If it was just in your own mind, and it would everyone would explain it differently. But as you said, and it's the same entities that people are seeing and coming across. It's
yeah.
wild, man.
The Cosmic Serpent too. Have you read that James Darby book, The Cosmic Serpent?
No, I haven't. I'm gonna write that
Man,
down.
it is a good one, and Graham Hancock's Supernatural. They're both along the same lines, but that James Darby, he went down into South America and did experiments with this ayahuasca. He lived with the natives, for quite a long time,
Hmm.
and uh, made friends with the shamans, and they shown him, uh, the spirit paths, and drank this ayahuasca and all this stuff, and he documented it all, and wrote a book all about it. But he said, without fail, everybody that took this drug described the same realm or place, and that they all had experiences and met this thing they called the cosmic serpent throughout the world. Everybody that's taken it has documented or talked about meeting this cosmic serpent. And he said that this serpent slowly revealed itself to him each time, and he took hundreds of spirit journeys. And he said, and toward the end, that the serpent actually spoke to him and told him that basically they were uh, star people and descended from the stars, and that they were escaping persecution on their home planet, and that they seeded mankind and placed their DNA inside of us, and that the keys to the universe and the answers to all of our questions of who we are, where we come from, what is our life purpose and meaning, is all encoded into our DNA, because they are the seed of it, and that the DNA strand is the intertwining of the cosmic serpent. Yeah,
Wow, that's wild.
pretty wild stuff.
Yeah, man, I need to check that book out as well.
Mm. And what's crazy, if you are a Christian, that goes hand in hand with the biblical narrative.
Yeah,
What does the
yeah,
Bible say? It says, in Genesis 6, the fallen angels, the sons of God, came down and bred with the daughters of men and created Nephilim, giants, hybrid beings. And then what did they do? They taught them the forbidden knowledge, the seven sacred sciences, and all was so corrupt, you know, spiritually and in the DNA, that God had to bring the great flood and hit the reset button. If not, humanity would have been wiped out.
yeah,
You talk to the Native American Indians, what do they say? That they were seeded from star people that came down and took their women and taught them knowledge. You go down to Peru, what do they say? Quetzalcoatl, the feathered plume serpent, came down
yeah,
and
man.
taught them civilization. It's the same story throughout time and throughout the entire world. Why? Because it all stems from an ancient source.
Yeah, 100%, man. Yeah. Oh, it's wild. I love it.
Mm. Yeah,
So interesting, man. Everything's connected, and you can put all these
it
things
is.
together. Cultures that have never even met have got the same story because it happened to the world.
Yeah.
It's wild.
That's why I love looking into the
Yeah,
ancient histories and the mythos and all this stuff, because there's common themes and connectivity between all of them.
yeah, yeah, man, for sure. And this is why I can't enjoy sport anymore, which is very
Yeah.
frustrating. But I still enjoy it, but it's just not the
Oh
same
yeah.
because there's more things to get, a lot more things
Yeah.
to work out.
Yeah,
Man,
you
that's
still like
wild.
milk, but man, once you have meat, you
Yeah.
want the steak. Where's the beef?
Yeah. You go down these rabbit holes, though, as I'm sure you are. It just takes you to another 10, and you're like, oh,
Mm,
man, where do I go now? But
yeah,
it is wild and it is fascinating. And really, when you look at it, it all links together. It's all so connected. Oh,
yeah.
man.
Everything dovetails. And
Yeah.
what's crazy too is, and some people will ask, well, what is the ancient source? Well, if you have, I can honestly say, I'm a Christian. I have my preconceived notions and my beliefs, but I have what I believe to be firm evidence with history, with myth, with archaeology, all these things that like a puzzle piece fits right in. And the Tower of Babel, what did it say? That we were all one nation, we were all one tongue. And at that event, the nations were divided amongst the sons of God, and that also the tongues were divided. So, therefore, all these ancient stories, the original stories, that's where they all went to their separate lands and to their separate languages. And then the telephone game happened. You remember that in school?
Yeah.
Well, I assume, I know we're from different parts of the world, but in the states, like kindergarten and first grade, they had a game called the telephone game, and the teacher would tell a secret or a phrase to one person, and you had to turn around and whisper and tell that to the next person.
Yeah.
And the
That's
next
it.
thing you know, when it got to like the 15th or 20th person, that story was twisted all to pieces.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what's happened to our history.
Yeah, man, for sure. And we've got to go back and try and work out where it's gone wrong, where there could have been something put in and took out. And yeah,
Mm,
love it, man. It's wild. It's so interesting.
yeah. So that was honestly my only like crazy supernatural experience, and uh I don't never care to have it again.
Yeah. Yeah. So once you came off the drugs that you prescribed, how quickly did the dreams come back to normal?
It was honestly like the within 24 hours. I'd say the next night I slept
Oh,
good if I
wow.
remember correctly. I
Yeah.
think it was something that opened a window, but I believe it was a window that God allowed to be opened for me to have a revelation and a better appreciation and some perspective.
Yeah. Sometimes you need to have that negative experience to completely change your life, your
Yeah.
perspective. It must have been terrifying though, because you said when you're in a dream state and you can get yourself out of it anytime. For
Mm,
that moment, you couldn't, and
no.
that must have been terrifying for you to realize I'm in a dream, but I can't get out of it. That's
Yeah. You
scary.
can't
That's scary.
move, and you're halfway pulling yourself out because it's like your eyes are fluttering open and you
Hmm.
see the room, but then it's like something just puts a hand over your face and forces your eyes closed again and pulls you back.
Yeah, yeah, man. Because I've experienced myself a lot of sleep paralysis. It's something that I've dealt with the last few years a lot. Well, I say that since I've been in this house, it's not, it's quite rare in this house. I still get it every now and again, but it's where I was living before. I used to get it once a week. I'd get sleep paralysis and I was being attacked, and it was a nasty, always a horrible experience.
Mm.
And yeah, so I know that feels, man, to not be able to get out of that. It's
Now,
horrible.
have you spoke with Vicky Joy Anderson?
Yeah, yeah, she's been on the show.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. I was about to say, then if not, I was definitely going to
yeah, she's great.
try to
Yeah,
hook you up with her. She's a
yeah.
wealth of knowledge.
Oh, 100%, man. Yeah. Her experiences with the sleep paralysis as well.
Hmm.
Terrifying, man. Yeah, she's great. I got into my sleep paralysis when I had her on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Mine was what I experienced was it was very strange because I didn't at the time, and I'm still not 100% sure what was going on, but at the time I didn't put it down to being a paranormal supernatural thing. It was more, I was just like, I think I'm just, as you were saying before, I was putting it down to being stressed at work, possibly not having enough sleep and things like that. And I'd have this experience weekly. I'd have the experience and I'd be like, right, okay, it's done now. It's gone. That was horrible. Didn't even tell my wife about it. Didn't even talk about it. And then it would happen again a couple of days later or next week. But whenever I was being attacked, I couldn't look around the room to see what was there, but there was something in the room. and I could feel it and I could see it in my mind's eye. And it was just like a black mass of evil, is the only way I can describe it. It didn't look like any, it was just like, just evil. And
Mm,
in my mind, I knew it was a witch, which sounds like I didn't understand why that I knew that, but it just, I was fighting a witch
yeah.
and I was having a battle with this thing every time. Eventually, I'd come out of it and I was like, it feels like this is a witch attacking me. And I didn't really look into it, to be honest, until listening to more podcasts and then eventually starting this show and getting more knowledge. And the hag is quite a common thing that people experience in sleep paralysis. And that's what I was experiencing. And when I was hearing that so many other people, like you were saying with the shadow figures, and so many people see the same thing, the Hat Man and stuff like that, I was experiencing before I knew what it was, the hag attacking
Yeah.
me. And that blew my mind at the time as well.
Mm. And what's
Scary
wild
stuff.
too is like when you go back through uh like the biblical paradigm, uh the book of Enoch
Yeah.
says that the women that defile themselves with the sons of God were turned into sirens. And you have multiple depictions of sirens. You have some that are like mermaids, the ones that sing to the sailors and lure them to the abyss into a watery grave, and then some are half bird, half women, and so and they become the incubus or the succubus rather. The incubus is the male version.
Hmm.
So I mean that even tells you where these things came from and
Yeah.
where they originated.
Yeah.
And as you were talking about it, this was my wife. It wasn't me, but I actually witnessed it. So I guess I mean it is a supernatural experience that I had. Was she had been to India, Haiti, South America, all over the world doing mission work, and she had a lot of wild and crazy experiences, and she was even cursed or hexed by a witch doctor in Haiti, and she would get sleep paralysis. And this was right around the time when I mean, she had them for years, but when I first started learning about them and stuff, when I first started getting into podcasting, and I actually found Vicky Joy Anderson, and she would talk about when she would sleep, these shadowy figures and stuff would sit on her chest or they would strangle her. And then she said sometimes that she would be paralyzed and couldn't move, and that these dark figures would like get right in her face and blow in her face and jump back and forth over the bed and jump over the top of her and just torment her and pull covers. And she said she could even feel sometimes like uh, depressions in the bed where it would sit down and stuff on the bed. And at this time, I had no supernatural experiences or anything like that. I've heard stories and stuff. And of course, I mean, it sounded kind of crazy to me, but I was like, she wouldn't lie to me, and she ain't making this stuff up. But she would have these little terrors every once in a while. And I'll never forget, I was in the living room and it was late at night. She always went to bed early and I was playing like video games or something. And it was like when we first got together. And I heard her like moaning and struggling, like from the bedroom. And I just, thought she was, dreaming or mumbling to herself or, talking to herself in a dream. And I just kind of ignored it. And I had my headphones on too, and I could still hear it. And it went on for a few minutes. And then I finally decided to go check it out. And when I walked back through the hallway, I seen that she had the lamp on next to the nightstand because she was the type that she would leave this little lamp on beside the nightstand and read books till she fell asleep. And a lot of nights I'd end up having to, slip in there and just kill the light and crawl into bed. Well, as I was walking back through there, I heard her, struggling and moaning and having, it sounded like she was struggling to breathe. And when I walked right through the threshold of the bedroom, I mean, seriously, like as soon as I stepped and crossed the threshold of the bedroom, she gasps like hard for air and just sits straight up out of the bed like the Undertaker in WWE, back in the day.
Yeah.
And she and then sat up in the bed. And as soon as she sat up, the light bulb blew. And I'm
Oh,
like, good Lord. I said, you all right? And she said, oh, thank God. She said, he's gone. And I said, what? And she said, that thing, that thing was in here strangling me. She said, I couldn't move. She said, and she said, you walked in, she said, it turned its head and looked at you and then took off. She said, and that's when the light went out. It was like me startling it and it jolted out and it just killed the light bulb on its way out or something.
man. Did she explain what it looked like?
She just said it was just this dark figure. She said it was just like a dark apparition, just a black mass.
Yeah. Wow, man. And you saw the light blow as well.
Yeah. And that's when I told you, I thought it was kind of wild or crazy, but I just trusted her. I said,
Yeah.
well, I don't think she's got any reason to lie to me.
Yeah.
But of course, in the back of your mind, you're like, it's a nightmare, or she was just having a lot of stress, or
Hmm.
something like that. But after all the encounters she said she had had and listening to Vicky Joy and things like that, and then seeing that happen, all my doubts went out the window.
How often would she have that experience?
She would have them 3 or 4 times a year.
Yeah. Man.
And what was even wilder was she talked about having them ever since she was a little kid. And she told me the first experience she ever had was with her mother. Her mother was a missionary also, and she also went to Haiti and a couple other countries. Well, her mother on one of the trips was also cursed by a witch doctor. And she said what happened was that these witch doctors uh, would like lay out traps and tricks and stuff for tourists and visitors, that they would lay out coins and money in the street. And she said, I was walking down the street. She said, there's money and coins just everywhere. She said, but I didn't need the money. I wasn't going to, pick it up. She said, but there was a little boy. She said, you could see his ribs and his spine. He was just sickly looking. She said, and he was begging for money. And she said, and I didn't have no money on me. She said, and we were walking through the town. She said, but there was all kinds of coins and money all over the ground. She said, I just leaned over. She said, and I just scooped up a lot of that change and that money and then put it in his bowl. And she said, the instructors or the interpreters like, no, 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 you can't do that. Oh God, don't touch it. She's like, what? She was like, they were like the witch doctors curse this money and throw it down. That's why nobody picks it up. It's cursed money. And then she said, oh, I don't believe in that. And she said, well, if he's too afraid to touch it, I'll touch it. She said, he obviously needs to eat. And that she just leaned down and kept scooping more of that money up and picking it all up and giving it to this boy. And as she said, as she was doing that, one of these witch doctors come walking by and seen her giving the money to the boy, and that he had like a little walking stick, and that he smacked the bowl out of the boy's hand and started beating the little boy with the stick and cursing at him in a different language. And Darlene said that I just yelled at him, told him to stop, and She said, and then he turned all his anger to me. She said, he just looked at me. She said, his eyes were just black. She said, black as black could be. And he got my face and started waving the stick in my face and saying some stuff, you know. And then she said, the interpreters and everybody just kind of grabbed me and kind of pulled me away. And she said, the interpreters were saying that he hexed you, put a curse on you, and all this stuff. And she said, I just laughed. She said, I didn't believe in that stuff. She said, and, you know, and the God I served was you know, stronger, more powerful, you know, and all this. And she said, but that night she said, I got deathly sick. She said I was throwing up. She said had just all kinds of issues that night, and it was 2 days before she had to go back home, and she said she was sick as a dog for the next 2 days, the remainder of the trip, and that she came back home and was still sick. And Rebecca was just a little girl, and well, that's my wife, and she said that I remember picking mom up at the airport, and she was sick, and that night, you know, we doctored her up and got her in bed and everything, and she said, and while I was laying in bed, she said, uh, I heard footsteps in the living room and coming down the hallway. And she said, and I just lay there in bed and was listening. She said, and then she said, I seen this shadowy figure come right to my door and stand there and just stare at me. She said it was so tall. She said that it had like turned its head sideways to fit into the house. She said, and the roof was, you know, it was every bit of 8, 9 foot ceilings. She said this thing was massive. And she said I just slid the covers over my head. And she said when I slowly pulled the covers down after a few minutes and looked, he was gone. She said, but then I heard the footsteps again, but it was coming from deeper down the hall next to mom and dad's bedroom. And she said uh, a few minutes had went by, and she said, and I heard my mom yelling and screaming. And then she said, and I heard my dad, Darlene, it's okay. It's okay. You're just having a dream. You're okay. You're okay. And she's like, that man was strangling me, you know. And she said, I just thought, you know, mom was delirious from, you know, exhaustion or whatever, or the medicine. She said, but now she said that I'm older. She said, looking back, she said, and with the experiences that I've had, she said, I firmly believe, she said, if that wasn't, she said, the witch doctor, it was the god or the demon that served him and was attached to my mother and followed her back to the States. She said, and I seen it.
Man, wow. Do you know if she managed to get rid of that, to lose that
Yeah,
attachment?
I suppose so. I don't know if it just left her or they prayed it out of her because, you know,
Hmm.
they were always a religious family, and, you know, they were always in prayer and fasting and things like that. So, I mean, she ended up getting rid of it, but I just don't know if it was that she knew what it was and got rid of it, or if it was just like an unintentional thing, you know. But
Yeah,
eventually, yeah, it left her alone.
that's wild,
Yes, you
man.
know, because her mother was cursed, and my wife as a child was just an innocent bystander, third party,
Hmm.
but seen it.
Yeah, wow, man. This world is wild, brother. There's a
Yeah.
lot, man. So going back to your experiences, other than when you've been in, um, when you've got drugs in the system, or you've been given the doctor's drugs, have you had any experiences where you've seen something in um in a state where you've not had any drugs in you?
No, I mean, as far as my experiences and stuff, I mean, I've never seen ghosts. I've never uh had any kind of experiences like that.
Hmm.
And 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 it could be, I firmly believe that some people are just more spiritually sensitive than others. And some people have, spiritual gifts that others don't. My wife, prime example, very spiritually sensitive. Uh, like I said, she had those dreams and experiences, and she's the type of person that she can go into a shop, and if there's Ouija boards or candles or something demonic, something like that is in there, she don't even have to see it; she can feel it. I've
Yeah,
been with her like at a flea market before, and we walk into a shop, and she's like, "Ooh, I just feel heavy. There's something in here. I got to get out." And then after I get her out, I see there's, Ouija boards or Wiccan books and stuff on the shelf at the back of the store. And me, I'm kind of just a contrarian. I mean, I question everything. Show me the facts,
yeah.
kind of guy. Uh, so I don't know if that's just, my mindset that kind of limits stuff like that, where it does take a drug or something like that to kind of kill my ego, I guess, or thin the veil for me.
It's
But
interesting though, man. Yeah.
yeah,
It's interesting because you've seen some wild things, obviously in a drug state, but
yeah,
you've seen shadow figures and goblins and things like that. I mean, that's wild.
yeah.
Uh, when you did see shadow figures and the goblins and things like that, were they a solid form? Was that just like they were just there?
It was just like they were just little dark shadow apparitions. Like they would be standing in the corner, or they would, run and streak past,
Mhm.
like, be driving down the road, and it's just like a deer or an animal or something like that. You just see this streak
Hmm.
shoot across. Uh, Never like really had like conversations with them or anything like that, but many nights that I'd be looking out the window, uh, seeing them, walking back and forth in the yard. And I'm like, I see you, you know, I see you, my friends, shut up, sit down, ain't nobody out there, or see, a shadowy figure of a person or a silhouette of a person, sitting in a tree limb looking right at me,
Yeah,
or walking by the window and things like that.
scary
But
stuff, man.
even the hallucinogenics, I mean, I've never took DMT or never drank ayahuasca, but I've ate lots of mushrooms and took several hits of acid and things like that, and never had uh, encounters with entities. All the times that I had done those drugs, uh, I had hallucinations, but they weren't entities. It was like I would just see bright, vivid colors, or the room would tilt, or the ceiling would turn into a conveyor belt and just start continuously rolling. Uh,
Yeah,
just things like that. But most of the people that I've talked to or heard their experiences, it's usually the ayahuasca or the DMT that they see the entities and have conversations with them, and things like that. I had a friend that smoked a lot of DMT, and he's told me some crazy stuff that he's seen. Uh, he said one night he loaded up his little pen or whatever, and I guess it's like powder you smoke or something. And he said, "Nah, hit that thing." He said 4 or 5 good times. He said next thing I know, he said I just fell back on the bed. He said, and it's like my soul come out of my body. He said, and I shot up into the sky and went into outer space. He said, and went through a wormhole. He said, and the stars and the planets were just whizzing by me. He said, and all these bright colors. He said, and seeing all these uh, geometric shapes and numbers and fractal patterns. He said, And he said, it's all just going by so fast. He said, and then all of a sudden, he said, I just come to a dead stop. He said, and there's an alien being in front of me, and said, and that's how you travel through time and space.
Wow.
He said, and I told him, wait, what? That's what that was? Take me back and go slower. I want to pay more attention. He said, and then it's like they hit my chest. He said, and I just fall through the wormhole. He said, twice as fast as I came through. He said, hit the bed and I'm back to normal. He said, it seemed like I was gone for an hour or two. He said, but I laid there. He said, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And
That's
I'm
another
like,
thing you hear so much
no,
is the
thank you.
no, no. But like the time perception is so, which is something you hear a lot with out of body experiences, that how time perception is so different. It can feel like years or months, and then you come back, as you say, it's like 10 minutes. It's wild,
Yeah.
man. It is wild. I've never done any drugs like that. I hear so many stories of people having very similar experiences. And it's like, man, I'm tempted. No, I won't.
Yeah, of course. I mean, of course. Because I mean, it's a back door to the spiritual or astral realm. You know what L.A. Marzulli calls the second heaven.
Mhm.
You know, that's exactly what that is. It's a back door.
Yeah,
But Jesus talked about in the New Testament that the thief and the robber comes through the back door.
yeah,
That
yeah,
he's the gate that you had to go through.
yeah. I've seen shadow figures, UFOs, ghosts without any of that. So I'd be quite worried if what would
Yeah.
happen if I did. Man.
Well, it's like in that book, Supernatural, I was telling you about with Graham Hancock. He goes into depth about a lot of that stuff too, like the James Darby book. But I can't remember the professor's name, but there was a professor uh, in the States that got approval to do DMT research and testing. And he covers it in that book like extensively. And this doctor kept notes on everything, on all his patients, on what they seen, how long they were under, the dosages he was giving them. But he was giving them pure DMT, not that stuff that you smoke or the stuff people's getting on the street. This was
Mhm.
pharmaceutical grade, and it was IV drip injected.
Yeah,
And so they were micro dosing them. They gave them their certain dose and just continuously fed it to them and kept them under for hours, as long as the patient was willing to go. And all of them started describing the same entities, the same places. And it said it got to the point that the doctor was getting freaked out. And he was saying that basically it was, I'm comparing it to this. He didn't, but I'm comparing it to this. It was like Stranger Things upside down,
yeah, yeah, man.
that the people were describing the same places, the same uh, landscape, everything. And it got so predominant that they actually started mapping the astral realm. That when they went under, he told the people to remember everything they could and write it down as soon as they woke up. And all of them, without fail, were
Wow,
describing the exact same places and they started mapping it. Okay, well, we started here this time. We know that so many feet this way and take a left will be here. And they compared notes and they started mapping
wow,
this
man.
other dimension.
How can you explain that? Like, there's
Yeah.
how can you explain that other than it's supernatural, paranormal? Like, there's no,
Yeah.
man. That's wild. You need to send me those books, bro. I'm going to read them, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man,
Supernatural, Graham Hancock. That,
yeah,
that was, and the
I'm gonna
Cosmic Serpent.
I'm gonna be getting them. I want to go back to your Lilith when you actually saw uh the image that took you straight back. Was it exactly the same? The picture that you saw, was it exactly the same as what you experienced next to you?
Yeah. I mean, it was just the only difference was is the image that I seen was more cartoony.
Okay, Yeah.
But I mean, it was completely. I mean, it was like if you took a person and cut them in half down the side, the whole back half was this black feathered bird and the wings and all. And then the front half was a naked, bare breasted woman. But the only difference is from like the calf down was bird feet, had red eyes, blonde hair, and then a beak for a mouth. Some of the images that I seen, she actually had human lips. But and this was years later, but they come out with that video game. Was it called Diablo or something like that? And Taco Bell was running the ads and had that this Lilith
Yeah.
uh uh personage on the cups and all that kind of stuff advertised for this game. It was eerily similar.
Wow, man. Wow. Because Lilith, I believe I might be wrong, but did she appear in the Bible once? Like she's talked about in the Bible once? Is that correct?
Yeah, and she's it's according to what translation you read,
Hmm.
but the Septuagint in the book of Isaiah mentions her by name in the Septuagint.
Okay.
And then if you go into it's either Isaiah or Psalms, one of the two, but it's talking about the destruction of Babylon. And it said, "I will lay your city waste, and the leopards, and will make it their home." And given all this prophecy, she's alluded to there, and they say, "And the screech owl will make her nest." And lay your land desolate, and it was alluding to the night hag, which was Lilith.
Man. Going back to something that you were saying earlier, and something I've heard you talk about a lot, that the Bible, I mean, some of the stories in the Bible are wild, like better than Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, it's there's so much in there that's super interesting that if they wanted to make I spoke about this the other day, if they wanted to make a high budget movie on it, it would be incredible. Like where
Yeah.
they could really make an incredible like with the Game of Thrones. If they wanted to make a Bible version of that, like a real Bible version, it'd be insane, man.
Oh yeah.
And it'd be amazing.
You wouldn't need a comic book, would you?
No,
Or a Marvel series.
yeah, no, man, you don't. Yeah. I wonder why they don't do that. I wonder why they haven't done that yet.
Because I think it's like in a lot of their minds they can separate fact and fiction, and they know Marvel, Game of Thrones, all this stuff. They can get ridiculously wild because it's fantasy. Everybody knows it's fantasy.
Hmm.
But with the Bible, it's like they believe that it's fantasy, but it's a fantasy that a lot of the masses believes is true, so they can't touch it. It's like a taboo in their eyes.
Yeah. Because why do you think this might be a difficult question? Why do you think the church doesn't really go into the supernatural side as much?
One, I think because it's weird, it's uncomfortable, and the reason why it's weird and uncomfortable is because we are so smart now. We're quote unquote so smart, and we are the age of reason and materialism. If we can't see, touch, smell, feel it, then it's not real. And science has now uh, become our god, you know, and it's awkward, it's weird, so therefore they can just not talk about it or choose not to touch it. But I've said many times on the podcast, it's like We have the most supernatural book in the world, but it's never touched or talked about in those aspects. And we are in a generation of people that are seeking the truth, are seeking answers, seeking the supernatural. And the church has all the answers with the Bible, but where they are denying it and refusing to touch it or look at it or talk about it, these people that are searching for these things are then forced to go to the people that are talking about it. And the ones that are talking about it are the ones sowing the seeds of mass deception. And they're given hints of the truth and pieces of the truth, but they're distorting it. And it's the coming great deception. And what's even worse is the people that were involved in occult practices, were involved in witchcraft, did come face to face with demons, supernatural entities, sleep paralysis episodes, demons, all these things, especially like in the witchcraft, they were summoning these things. They know it's real. People that's had experiences, they know this stuff is real. And when they go seeking answers and they go to the church and their pastor laughs, scoffs, oh, that's not true. Oh, that's made up. Oh, well, oh, you heard this other preacher or somebody else say that this was in the Bible. Oh, they misrepresented that. They twisted it. You know, they're just trying to sell books. They're just trying to entertain you. That stuff ain't real. And you're saying that to the person that witnessed it, that experienced it, knows it's real. And you're saying it's not, then you've just told them that you are an idiot. You know nothing, and they're going to leave and never come back. We're doing a disservice all the way around by not talking
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah. It is strange, man. Do you feel like it's something that going forward, more priests will open up to the conversations? And there seems to be a slight shift happening with the paranormal and the supernatural in general around the world. I don't know if
Mm.
that's just because I'm doing a paranormal podcast and I'm very much focused on it, but it does seem that everyone is becoming more open to the paranormal,
Yeah, they will.
supernatural.
I think there's going to be some coming around. Of
Mm,
course, there's some going to be stiff necked and stay the same way they've been doing it forever.
yeah.
But the book of Revelation says that in the final days, he said, I will pour my spirit upon all flesh. Knowledge will increase. The young men will have dreams, and the old men will prophesy, and that they will see things, and men's hearts will fail them. What it says, if it wasn't for the sake of him cutting the time short, that even the righteous shall be deceived. Well, what is that? That's the people that's been going to church every Sunday and hearing the same 3 or 4 cookie cutter sermons. Yes, we know that Jesus died on the cross for our sins and saved our soul and paid our sin debt. Yes, we know that Jesus was born of a virgin. And yes, we know he healed the sick and the lame. But Jesus is more than a feel good life coach on Sunday morning. And there's more to the faith than that one chapter. There's a whole book, and these pastors are staying in the one chapter. It's time to turn the page. Once
Mm,
you become a Christian, accept Christ as your Savior, what next? You got to get off the milk and get onto the meat.
yeah.
And if not, you're going to be one of those that's deceived. And I firmly believe that that's going to be these fallen rebellious angels and Satan presenting themselves as extraterrestrials from another planet, and years of ancient aliens and people, like I said earlier, that's given little pieces of the truth and distorting it and deceiving many, have done laid the groundwork for this great deception. And they're going to show up and say, we are your seers. We're the ones that you have seen depicted in the Egyptian pyramids, the star people that the Indians have talked about, the Peru, Quetzalcoatl, all these guys. Yeah, those ancient alien guys were right. We are the gods. We're the ones that seeded you, taught you everything you know. Now we're here to give you your next upgrade. Follow me.
Yeah. And do you think that's the Project Bluebeam?
That's one of those things that's so, that rabbit hole is so diverse. I
Yeah.
think it's multifaceted.
Yeah.
I think since Roswell, uh, that a ship did crash,
Hmm.
and it was fallen angel technology, and we have traded, just like in Genesis 6, we traded the women for forbidden knowledge. You hear of all these people getting abducted and all these different kind of phenomena. You hear about women being pregnant and all of a sudden the baby being gone,
Hmm.
men being abducted, and their semen taken. I think it's Genesis 6 all over again. Solomon said, nothing new is under the sun. It's the same story, the same agenda. It's just been repackaged. And we traded the truth for a lie. Since 1949, or 7, I'm sorry, since Roswell, we've had an explosion of knowledge and technology advancements surpassing any other time or generation since the creation of
Hmm.
mankind.
Yeah.
Look how many thousands of years it took us to make a wheel. How many thousands of years to learn to do everything. It's been a slow progression. But man, after Roswell,
100%, man. 100%.
there's a reason why people need to take the time to ask the right questions. It's easy to get stuck in the rat wheel of life, going to work, coming home, going to sleep, taking your kids to soccer practice, rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
Worry about what vacation spot you're going to go to this summer. How your favorite basketball team's doing in the playoffs. Yeah, those things are great and they're entertaining, but at the same time, they're designed to be distractions to keep you from asking the questions that you need to ask and seeking the things you need to seek. Once again, nothing new is
100%.
under the sun. What did the Romans do when the people started asking questions about what Caesar was doing? Put on a circus. Call the gladiators.
Yeah.
Let's entertain and distract the people. They're asking too many questions.
100%, man. Yeah. The powers that be don't want us asking questions. Yeah. They want us living in a little bubble, fighting against things that don't really matter.
Yeah, mindlessly looking at our phones, Facebook scrolling,
Yeah. Yeah.
and uh,
And I'm guilty
being
of it, man.
yeah, just being smart enough to do the daily jobs and chores that we
Hmm.
that we need to do to keep fattening their pockets and their bellies, and we don't need to be any smarter than that.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And then you got guys like us and the people listening that will question, that will look into it. And that's just what we got to keep doing, man.
Yeah, you got to spread the fire, man.
100%. 100%. I feel like this would be a good point to wrap it up, but I want to ask you, if you don't mind, if you've still got time, about the Bigfoot and the Bible connection.
That's going to have to be a whole
Is that
nother
is that another
episode.
episode? Okay, I did think that, brother. I did think that. But I have loved talking to you tonight, man, and I'd love to get you back on to go into
Yeah.
that one. Thank Justin, thank you so much, man. It's been a
No,
blast
thank you,
talking to you.
man.
Super interesting stuff. I really enjoyed talking to you tonight. Can you tell the listeners where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find me at my website, Prometheus Lens Podcast.com. I'm on YouTube, Spotify, Spreaker, anywhere you can consume podcast content, you can find me there, and I'm on all the social media platforms. Uh, but I also have the podcast that I mentioned that got me started, and I still do that with my three buddies that showed up for our Bible study meeting, called the Dig Bible Podcast. And same thing, YouTube and all the different places you can consume content. And that's the Dig Bible Podcast.com. And that's just us deep diving into the word. And uh, the other one is the word, but seeing how it ties into all these other fascinating subjects.
Awesome stuff, man. Well, I'm going to be listening, that is for sure. Guys, make sure you head over, give 5 stars. Justin, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to doing this again, man. If you don't mind, I've got to get you back on to talk
We'll get it
more.
scheduled.
Let's do it, brother. But thank you so much for listening, guys. We're going to be back very soon for more freaky conversations. In the meantime, stay safe and keep it freaky. Bye for now. Thank you very much, brother. God bless.
You too, brother. Thank you for having me.